1, and then you'll go to the Q section is number 2, and then the summary section is number 3. The notes are any way you want to teach them how to take notes. And the idea is that obviously, and this is what I've been hearing from teachers, is we need to teach them how to take textbook content, gut it of just facts and important information, and then organize it in some way that they understand, that they can refer back to. So, and whatever method you use, I teach them how to outline, sometimes they use webs, sometimes just a graphic organizer of some kind. And if you notice back in the folder, we have put in, there's 2 different types. You got the QPA, the type of lines, and this is the one I started them with. So again, it has the 3 parts. So they would take notes on the right there. They're going to do their cues on the left, and then on the back side I have the summary side. And I'll talk about each one there. But then there's also a blank one we put in there that has no lines, and that's if you wanted to do some sort of graphic organizer if you're choosing on that side, where you don't want lines.
Just have sorry in there.
I think sometimes when a lot of people are on the same document, and this is happening in my classroom, it'll say you can't all be on it at the same time. So if people are having errors, just
Is
keep
it
trying.
slowing down?
It'll
Mine
say
says sorry, an error has occurred.
Mine did too. Yeah, I had it though.
Okay.
Look on a partner.
You just, it won't let you do
Like
everything.
bumper
at the same
car,
time.
somebody else.
Has there been any thought, and I truly don't know if this needs to be necessary, but if we would use a school-wide basic format, would that help you for Cornell notes? Or
Well,
is that?
and I was hearing from teachers that they didn't want to get set on this way to take notes or that way to take notes. And so that's why Cornell does have a little freedom that you can choose. I do outlines the majority of the time, but I also like to show them other ways to take notes because it's to their benefit. So the second part is the cue section. So after they've taken their notes on the right, they would then do the cues. The cues basically are as it's listed there. I mean, you're looking for main ideas. You can write questions. I always tell them this is kind of the Jeopardy portion of the exercise, and I always ask kids if they know what Jeopardy is. A couple hands usually go up. But the answers on the right, and then they create a question that can be answered by the evidence on the right side, by their notes. So they create some sort of question. So ideally, the point of it is that they can cover this information and they can quiz themselves as they go back through it. Research says to do it within, if you do it within 24 hours, you're going to hold on to that information, obviously at a higher rate than if you wait longer. And the more you do it, obviously the more you're going to recall it. I was also looking at Cornell. Cornell was in a study, and it was a 2008 study, and I think it was Wichita State, that stated that Cornell notes showed improvement on analyzing data and putting information that we take and interpreting it ourselves. Basically what the Common Core is asking us to do, as opposed to other note methods. Cornell had the highest rate of accuracy. If you look at that image, this is the notes I did 2 weeks ago. We're learning about nomadic and sedentary tribes. I actually took this picture and I put it up on Edmodo for kids that were gone, so they can access it. I had them read and annotate a short article, 2-sided article. They took the information, they organized it into that structure, and then they wrote questions on the left similar to that. I encouraged them to do symbols, write questions, and I always try and get them to write more than just what is questions. A lot of times the students, they just write what is, and I try and encourage them to get a little bit more creative with that. And then we put just different examples. You notice there's a Cornell note example, and it gives you different ones back. various types, and so you can review that, go through it at your leisure. If you Google Cornell Notes, you're gonna get a ton of resources, so they are everywhere that they're gonna pop up. The last section, which is gonna basically relate to the summary writing, is just that, writing a summary about the notes that they just took. So the notes that they write here, that then they're gonna put those ideas, the main points, down into writing. And I talked to my students about, I took them through each step. I said, okay, notice how many times we covered this material. We read an article, we read and annotated it, then we put them down in notes, and then you reviewed it again to write questions and find the main points, and then you reviewed it again to summarize it, and then I also had them turn to their partner and read their summary that they wrote. So they hit it 5 times in a period and a half. And so they were, and we kind of went slow. We could probably do this in one class period. A lot of times I'll have them do the notes, and then the next morning, maybe do the Q questions and or the summary. So that is how we've used them in our class, how I find them beneficial. Is there anyone that would feel willing to share how they've used them in math or other subjects?
I do backwards. I write the questions, the vocabulary terms, and then they have to go through the book, or they go through our conversations, and they answer the questions.
Right.
And then show them if they're one page, how they could cover up the answers, and that's their review.
Yeah, and I've done that the same way. And that's a good example of giving them different ways to do it. You can write the questions, and then they come up with the information. Sometimes I'll give them the information just for sake of time. I outline it for them right away, and then they go through and review, maybe highlight certain things, but definitely. Any others? Yeah.
I've never used Cornell Notes until this year, and I really like them for math class. My student teacher has created a kind of a form that we use. Sometimes it's blank on this, well, usually it's blank on the side, because then we can do examples.
Sure.
And then we kind of come up with cues. What are some of the different things that we've talked about today, so that they know what the lesson was about. Sometimes they write a summary, sometimes we give them a journal entry down at the bottom. But it has helped the kids, because we have ours filled out, and then they pretty much model after us, and they've kept their notes much more organized than ever before.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I found it to be successful, and it's just the process is what makes it Cornell, going through each of these steps. But like I said, I find it successful and helpful for teachers, because you can modify it to fit your classroom if need be, make changes. Any other questions? Is that just because it's Monday, or?
Has anybody done this on the computer?
Like
this form?
Word or?
Trying to.
Peter's had that on the computer, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because he's,
Does he?
he used to give my kids last year typed out like a
Sure.
word missing or something, and so then they wouldn't have to fill in everything.
Yeah,
It's like-
definitely. I mean,
And you can fill it on the computer?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm not
And
sure.
so you can even take
It's on
the blank one that we had and just upload it into your file.
I wondered if you'd be able to tab, you know how sometimes you can't tab over. I don't know
Yeah.
if you'd have to set that up as college.
You could probably make a template up and save the template.
But you're only working with this much space.
Right.
Space bar or something,
It's like, okay, column, it's like a column.
but for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the next step of the Cornell Notes is the summary. And that's a struggle for me as an English teacher. It just naturally comes to teach kids how to write how to correctly write a summary, but I know for others it's not as easy. So this year we're introducing SCRIBE to the staff as a way to kind of organize their thoughts into a comprehensive summary at the bottom of Cornell Notes. Julie's going to share some examples from her class last year, and I'm going to share my process, what I walked through with the students, just to get them introduced to it. So my first step was they get a reading selection. I just picked some short informational piece that's a little high interest for them. I picked everyday executions, get a little gross in there, and they like it. So we start with their purpose, and I tell them you always read with a purpose. Their purpose was to summarize. We're practicing baby steps. Can we write a summary paragraph? Because we're going to use that several times throughout the year with different projects we do in writing and language arts. So we start with just a paragraph. So we discuss first the text features, and this is actually, there we go. That's a picture of our article that we start out with, and we talk about the text features, the text structure, what we think the text structure is, and we take notes on all those things. So you see their notes on the text structure. We know we're going to be summarizing, so we talked about what summary means. We're looking for main ideas. And then we start highlighting, we start reading with that purpose in mind. So we're highlighting those main ideas that we could use for a summary as we go through. Next up is using those Cornell notes. So we take those highlighted details that we have that we said we felt were important for a summary, and we talk about our text structure. Because part of SCRIBE is knowing what structure are we going to use to write this, so we have appropriate transition words and all of those things to connect our writing so it's not just choppy, these are my list of my facts. We want our sentence fluency to be there, especially for language arts teachers. That's huge when it comes to writing. So we look at this, and actually Jessie had shared this with me last year, and we use it. There we go. We use this, we keep it in our notes. So it has our different text structures, and they realized through reading through the everyday executions that it is a description. And I have them work through these. What makes it a description? How do you know that? We go through each of these. And then you see it all over on the far right is the graphic organizers that you can use to better organize your details. So for our description over there to the side, it says we could use a web. So the kids talk through this process. I don't hand it to them. I don't say this is what you're going to do. They have to work through that problem solving themselves. And so they come up with description, and you see in the middle it says signal words. These are our transitions. You're going to see that on SCRIBE, why we need to have these to refer to for our transitions. And this is their Cornell notes that they did for me. And I use Cornell notes differently just because of my subject. This is one student's example, and this was for my on target, my at grade level students. So I had the web kind of filled out a little bit. It's the first time we were ever doing this together as a class. So I had the different groups of people and how they executed criminals. And they filled out the details from the things that they'd highlighted. My struggling students, I filled out the web a little bit more for them. I try to scaffold that way, so I have kind of blanks in their boxes that they fill in the words based on the things that they highlight. My advanced kids, they just get a blank Cornell notes. They have to kind of put everything together themselves. But I use the Q column for my class oftentimes to make sense of everything that's in their notes section. So once we get our web filled out, we look at it and go, okay, what do all these details tell us? What is the main idea? What could we use for our topic sentence? And we use our Q column for that purpose. So you'll see this person has over here on their Q column their topic sentence. And there's some editing there. We discuss and kind of collaborate, especially this first time through, what would be an appropriate all-inclusive topic sentence. So this is one example of a student's work. Then we go to using the SCRIBE. And Mrs. Klein wrote for you up here on SCRIBE. I also emailed out to you a poster that explains what SCRIBE stands for, and then a blank sheet like the one I'm going to show you here. But it just stands for set up a diagram, which we've done in our Cornell notes, and that can be anything, any kind of graphic organizer, or you can do an outline, whatever. It doesn't matter. C is create a title. R is reveal the topic. So we focus on that topic sentence. I is iron out the details. Those are our supporting details that they've highlighted. Bind it together with a clincher. Kids are, this year especially, I can tell they're pretty good at actually topic sentences and supporting details. They still need to work on closing it with a clincher, not ending it with a detail. And the last step is editing. Editing is going to be huge for us this year and in the future as we start moving the kids towards more independency when it comes to writing. So that E is very important. So this is an example of that student's paper or their SCRIBE, and we use this throughout the year. After a while, they don't need this organizer anymore. They start doing it on their own. They kind of remember exactly what needs to be in a paragraph. I started them out with a sentence starter. They had that option since this was the first time we were working on topic sentences. This person didn't want to use it, so you see they've crossed it out. They don't want to use my sentence starter. They had their own, which is totally fine. I tell them that they can do that. And they've got their details, and then since we used a description text structure, they went back and looked at those notes that I showed you earlier for these transition words. And I just tell them, pick out a few that you're comfortable using within your sentences that you can put either at the beginning of the sentence, at the end, somewhere, so it helps with your sentence fluency. Otherwise, you just have a list of facts, and the flow is not there. So they've used such as, for instance, things that they chose off of that graphic organizer. And then we talk about the clincher being pretty much a topic sentence, only you're rewording it. You're putting it in different words. So that's their example. And then finally, we take this and we write our rough draft paragraph. And with my class, since I am the language arts teacher, we go into more time than you would probably in your classes spend on the writing process and the editing. We talk more about the 6 traits. Whereas for you, you might only focus on a couple of the traits instead of all 6. So ideas and content may be real big for you. But this is one of the students' last, and it has my edits on there. This was after they did some peer editing within the classroom. They turned it in this way, and these are a few, just my feedback. But they have everything they needed to. They've got their topic sentence. I see that they've used transitions throughout, and they have their clincher sentence. So that was my ultimate goal, is that they could write a well-formed, complete summary to go along with their SCRIBE. If they can't write a good summary, then you're missing the whole point of it for them. So this has worked for my students. I shared it with PLC last year. A few teachers tried it out. Julie has some things that she can show you from her students, which is great to see because hers are the ones that are really struggling, and it was helpful to her. Can I just like this? She needs to hook up her computer, so